The Royal Rumble in 2017 broke the format of having a Royal Rumble pay-per-view in a traditional arena. WWE opted to host the iconic pay-per-view inside a huge dome, just like they did for WrestleMania 17. WWE realized that the Rumble involves 30 wrestlers running down to the ring in dramatic fashion, so if they were to have a match take place in a huge arena, this would mean it would take a long time for certain wrestlers to get to the ring. While WWE had a solution, they would show the beginning of certain entrances for the likes of The Big Show, Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt, but then they would cut to the in-ring action and then cut back to the wrestler as they were about to enter the ring. No, those wrestlers weren't huffing and puffing, as it was revealed that they used carts to transport certain wrestlers to the ring. Thanks to the images circulated via social media during the show, fans were able to see just how certain wrestlers got to the ring so quickly, and it was no doubt a creative yet humorous way for the WWE to deal with the issue at hand. We're just wondering why they didn't think of that in '97.
Let's see exactly what...
Oh, here he is live!
Oh my goodness! Man.
When Sin Cara would debut on television in 2011, one of the few highlights of his run was his entrance. He would run down to the ring and leap over the ropes in an entrance which always popped the crowd. However, it wasn't soon after his debut on TV that fans realized that Sin Cara was actually using a trampoline to jump over the ropes. This was seen thanks to the images shared by fans in attendance at the show, and it was even accidentally shown on TV a number of occasions. As a result of this, WWE decided to tweak his entrance and the trampoline was completely removed. In its place was a basic entrance which involved him running to the ring and doing a standard flip from the middle rope. Still incredibly impressive though. Have you ever wondered how The Undertaker stays under the ring for so long, or have you ever wondered how he knows when to come out and what he even does under there for so long? Well, over the years WWE have exposed the secret of how superstars function under the ring. It turns out there's a monitor and headset under the ring which allows wrestlers to watch the show as well as communicate with WWE officials such as Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn backstage. Fans have learned this over the years thanks to spotting monitors under the ring during a show where the lights go out and then a wrestler such as The Undertaker or Bray Wyatt appear shortly after. Once you spot a monitor under a ring, you can usually be guaranteed that someone is making a surprise appearance during that same show. Between the years of 1999 and 2016, SmackDown was actually taped every Tuesday. This meant that WWE could edit the show in any way they saw fit, and this extended to the crowd's reaction. They would heavily edit the shows with piped-in crowd noise so that the babyfaces would be cheered
Of WrestleMania!
whilst the heels would be booed, actually completely different than it was in attendance.
I'm just the guy.
I dig that energy, Manchester. Bring that, please. Well, you asked for it.
The UK crowd is one of the more vocal crowds with chants and reactions that Vince McMahon may not want to have broadcast. As a result, they will edit these out and replace them with the fake crowd noise, normally known as the hairdryer pop.
Obnoxious jerk.
Let's be fair, it's no secret that WWE heavily scripts the majority of their promos. However, over the years, they've made this secret incredibly obvious to their audience on a number of occasions. For instance, The Rock at one stage had to write his promos on his wrist in order to remember it, and this was later called out by John Cena.
Just like I don't need my notes for my promo on my wrist.
The most recent incident of WWE exposing the fact that their promos are scripted was when Tucker walked into a backstage segment still carrying the promo script that he was about to deliver before he awkwardly threw it away while still in the shot. The same also applied to when Paul Heyman was on Talking Smack. How many times have you heard Michael claim that Raw is sold out tonight? Well, in reality, this isn't always true. WWE usually says this to make their shows seem bigger and make it must-see television. However, thanks to social media, actual attendances can usually be seen thanks to fans uploading pictures of the crowd. Now, this was a trend around 2017 and 18 of WWE being unable to sell a lot of tickets for Raw and SmackDown, and this resulted in WWE leaving the hard camera side completely empty. On commentary, WWE would still pretend that they had a packed house when this couldn't have been further from the truth. But the worst attendance had to go down at Stomping Grounds, where they literally topped half of the arena. The 2020 Money in the Bank pay-per-view took place at WWE HQ upon Titan Towers, and the event was well received by fans who praised their efforts to still make the Money in the Bank pay-per-view feel special despite what was going on in the outside world. One of the more notable spots in the match involved Baron Corbin throwing off Rey Mysterio and Aleister Black off the roof of WWE's HQ. However, as WWE used crane shots to show the HQ from above, Fans could clearly see that there was a crash pad laid out where the spot was going to take place, which instantly killed the illusion and drama of the act itself. Well, okay, obviously we didn't think that they were thrown off the roof legitimately, but that was a badly timed camera shot. Ever since WWE transitioned into a PG product in 2008, they have a strict ban on blood and blading. However, there have been a few exceptions to this. For instance, Brock Lesnar made Randy Orton bleed at SummerSlam 2016 using a stiff elbow to the head in a planned spot. Another instance was when Triple H and Roman Reigns had a dramatic brawl on Raw. However, upon closer inspection, it was revealed that Raw announcer Byron Saxton passed Reigns a blood capsule, which allowed Reigns to create an illusion of a crimson mask for the segment. Since the inception of the tables match in WWE at the Royal Rumble 2000, when the Hardy Boys would face off against the Dudley Boys, the tables match has become one of the WWE's most popular match types. Introducing a table into a match has become a surefire way to get the crowd instantly invested in the match, and a wrestler being put through a table will indeed get one of the biggest reactions of the entire show. As for the tables themselves, they are made from extremely thin chipboard, meaning they can barely maintain the weight of a single human being. Therefore, when someone falls or goes through the table, it instantly implodes, making an explosive noise in the process. Although we must admit that the metal poles holding up the table may cause some damage. It has also been known for tables not to break on occasion. This is usually when the wrestler doesn't land in the middle of the table, which can look kind of awkward on television and usually means the wrestler has to be put through the table again. As for the Japanese table, well, those are normally actually made out of real wood, hence why they never break. The kendo stick has become one of the most popular weapons in modern WWE. This is mainly because it's one of the safest, and the risk of injury from a blow from the weapon is extremely low. The kendo stick itself is made from hollow wood and breaks apart after just a few strikes. The tape on both sides of the sticks allows the stick to stay together for a few shots without breaking off into little pieces, which could seriously injure someone. Recently though, the kendo stick has somewhat become forever damaged as a threatening and imposing weapon, following the infamous Bayley vs Alexa Bliss kendo stick on a pole match that did no favours for the aura around the weapon or the two women in the match itself. The garbage can is actually one of the weapons that is completely different from the traditional garbage can you see lying around your home. The ones featured on WWE television are made out of aluminum or tin. This means the can itself is no thicker than a can of soda or beer. This means the can does little to no damage on the wrestler being hit by it, which is always a good result when it comes to a weapon used in wrestling. Surprisingly, it can actually help a move be less painful for a wrestler to take. For instance, when Shane McMahon hits the coast to coast, the garbage can he uses softens the blow for the wrestler, meaning they get a cushioned impact rather than the full force of Shane McMahon crashing into them boot first. Thumbtacks, to the surprise of many, are actually the real deal. Thumbtacks don't need much of an explanation, as the consequences of a wrestler coming into contact with the tacks is quite self-explanatory. As soon as a wrestler takes a move on the unforgiving tacks, the damage is instantly noticeable, and this is usually followed by blood and agony. Thumbtacks were extremely common in ECW, and then later in the Attitude Era in matches featuring Mick Foley. They would slowly disappear from WWE television following WWE reverting back to a very PG product. However, they would make a rare appearance at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view in 2016 in a match between Dean Ambrose and Chris Jericho. Jericho, who took a bump in the tacks for the first time in his career, stated that the anticipation for the bump in the tacks was worse than the actual bump itself. He also mentioned taking the tacks out is actually much worse, and the pain resides for several days. The usage of barbed wire in WWE is actually quite complex, as they vary when they use real genuine barbed wire or they opt for fake barbed wire for the safety of the wrestlers in the match. Notably, in Mick Foley's autobiography, he discussed his match with Triple H at the 2000 Royal Rumble. But speculation suggests that if fake barbed wire is used, the tips of it are rubber, meaning the wrestler won't be seriously hurt. On occasion, wrestlers opt to use the genuine stuff for dramatic effect. For instance, Batista in his Hell in a Cell match in 2005 against Triple H opted to use the genuine barbed wire to get the best result possible. The guitar is a weapon made famous by Jeff Jarrett. His trademark guitar was often used as a weapon to smash over his opponent's head. The spot in question where Jarrett would hit someone with a guitar would always look great on television, because the guitar would explode on the person's head and make a loud noise which looked incredibly effective. but the guitars themselves are actually genuine guitars. However, they are shaved off completely on the inside, making them incredibly light and incredibly breakable the moment they are smashed over a wrestler's head. Now we all know what you're thinking, well, the case hence his real life injury. Jake Roberts once told in a shoot interview that the person who was in charge of getting the guitar was Pat Patterson's partner. Whenever you see a wrestler go through a glass window on WWE television or be hit with a glass object of some kind, despite the sound and damage looking very similar to the impact that would come from the damage of normal glass, it is in fact sugar glass. Sugar glass is completely safe to use, well, when used in the correct capacity that is. Despite glass in the WWE being extremely safe, disaster would strike in the match between Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon at the 2001 King of the Ring. In one of the most brutal matches of all time, Angle would suplex Shane through panels of glass. However, they wouldn't smash on impact, and Shane's head would bounce off the glass and land on the concrete below. It took numerous attempts for the glass to break. The reason for this is because WWE had forgotten to rig the glass and actually used plexiglass instead of the sugar glass. The match was so brutal due to the mistakes with the glass that Shane needed 50 stitches following the match. The sledgehammer has an interesting history in WWE. Introduced by Triple H in 1999 as his primary weapon. Initially it was a fake sledgehammer that was used whenever Triple H would use the weapon on his opponents. The fake sledgehammer would contain a rubber head attached to a wooden base. The only time a real sledgehammer would be used is when Triple H would use it on something such as a casket, just as he did on an episode of Raw in 1999. The usage of the sledgehammer would drastically change forever at WrestleMania 17. This was in the match between the... Unfortunately, the sledgehammer broke, which forced the Undertaker to suffer a nasty cut. From that point onwards, WWE would opt for Triple H to use a real sledgehammer. He would then proceed to use his hand to cover up the metal parts of the hammer, so no harm would be caused to the other wrestler. Since the first ladder match in the WWE between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart in 1992, the ladder match has attained a status as one of the most popular matches in WWE history. Now the ladder is used in two instances during a match. It is used as an instrument for the wrestlers to climb to win the match, but it's also used as a weapon. This naturally means that the ladder must be strong enough to contain the body weight of wrestlers, but also safe enough to be used as a weapon. The structure of the ladder is slightly different to a traditional ladder. The steel used in the ladder is hollow, so it's lighter and it's safer to hit a fellow wrestler with. Additionally, the center of the ladder is made to be much weaker. This is for spots where a wrestler is put through a ladder, which is often seen in the Money in the Bank matches. Despite the ladders being made slightly differently than traditional ladders, ladder matches and then later TLC matches have caused countless injuries. For instance, the three teams who made the concept of the TLC famous, that being the Hardy Boys, Dudley Boys and Edge and Christian, who all cite the matches with ladders as reasons why they still have injuries to this very day. The steel chair is probably the most iconic weapon in WWE history. Incorporated into several famous matches and segments throughout history, fans have often wondered if steel chairs are all that WWE makes them out to be. The fact is, the steel chairs are legit. The only difference between the chairs seen on WWE televisions and normal steel chairs is that the rivets are broken. This means that the chairs can be folded completely flat, which makes them safer to hit a fellow wrestler with. Now there was a time where wrestlers would take chair shots to the head on a regular basis, but fortunately due to research into concussions and issues relating to blows to the head, chair shots to the head have been officially banned in WWE. Former WCW World Champion Diamond Dallas Page recently discussed the dangers of the chair shot on Joe Rogan's podcast. He discussed how in preparation for the infamous Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman vs DDP and Karl Malone match in WCW, DDP had to explain the importance of the execution of the chair shot to Rodman. He would explain to Rodman that the steel chair must always be kept completely flat when performing a chair shot, or it could end up seriously injuring a fellow wrestler. Bray Wyatt's The Fiend character was one of the most interesting characters that WWE have ever had on their television screens in recent memory. One of the things that made Bray's character so special and unique was that he successfully managed to balance the two characters at once. One character was the host of the Firefly Funhouse, and this was a charismatic yet chilling character. The other was The Fiend, a demonic entity that managed to win the Universal title on 2 occasions. The December 7th, 2020 edition of Raw featured Firefly Funhouse Bray going one-on-one with his arch-rival Orton in the main event. But during the closing moments of the match, Orton would execute an RKO on Bray when suddenly The Fiend had swapped places with normal Bray. This led to fans questioning how did they do this during a live broadcast on Raw. Well, it turned out that portion of the segment involving The Fiend was simply taped before Raw went live on the air. This was possible thanks to the WWE being in the Thunderdome and having no actual fans in attendance. If they were in a traditional arena with paid fans in attendance, this would be next to impossible to pull off. It's tradition in WWE that if a superstar is injured, they will communicate with the referee to update them on their injury and condition. However, it appears to be a recent trend in WWE that superstars can now signal to the ringside doctor that they need medical assistance. This was discovered during the Humberto Carrillo vs Sheamus match on the May 10th, 2021 edition of Raw. The match featured Humberto performing a sunset flip powerbomb on Sheamus to the outside of the ring. But the issue was that Sheamus came crashing down on Humberto's knee. Humberto then signaled to the ringside doctor that he was injured and the match needed to be called off. The referee eventually got involved and the match was called off with immediate effect. And when the Hell in a Cell debuted in 1997, the match was designed to be the most brutal match in WWE history. This was certainly the case during the first few Hell in a Cell matches, however, as the concept went into the PG era, the match slowly became less and less brutal. Take for instance the match between Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre, which took place in 2021's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. The most notable spot in the match involved McIntyre being chokeslammed to the outside of the ring, with Drew landing on a crash pad, and this received criticism from fans who believed that the crash pad had no business in a Hell in a Cell matchup. Now, there are some fans who appreciated the WWE trying to keep their talent safe, but a crash pad being used in a Hell in a Cell match is an interesting safety precaution to say the very least. Speaking of the Hell in a Cell match between Lashley and Drew McIntyre, following the spot involving a crash pad, a mysterious hand emerged from under the ring. This hand was trying to dispose of the evidence of the crash pad, but the individual failed miserably. Clearly not a lot of thought went into how the WWE were going to present the bump that McIntyre was going to take. Both the crash pad and the crew member were visible in shots. At the beginning of the video, we mentioned how one of the arch rivals for The Fiend was Randy Orton. Their most infamous match took place at the 2020 TLC pay-per-view in the first ever Firefly Inferno match. In the match, Orton would successfully be victorious after The Fiend was engulfed in flames. Amazingly, this was actually Bray who performed the spot. Bray was protected thanks to several layers of clothing, ensuring that none of his skin was burnt. The former WWE champion was also protected thanks to fireproof gel which covered his hair and other vulnerable parts. Although major safety precautions were taken with Bray, he deserves a ton of credit for agreeing to perform such a serious and dangerous stunt. Following Bray catching fire during his match with Orton, he would then run into the ring and he would receive a devastating RKO. It was then that Orton poured gasoline all over Bray and set him alight. TLC 2020 seemingly went off the air with one of WWE's top superstars being burnt to death. However, the secret to this WWE trick is rather simple. The version of Bray that Orton set on fire was simply a dummy version of Bray. WWE achieved this by pre-taping the Firefly Funhouse match, meaning they could do multiple takes to make sure it looked as legitimate as possible. A Talking Smack is a show where character development is key. The show involves talent being interviewed and revealing motivations behind their actions and character. The popular show has received widespread praise for being more lenient in relation to allowing talent to be a little more unscripted. However, it appears as if Vince McMahon is still in direct control of what talent say, and we know this thanks to Paul Heyman. In 2020, Heyman appeared on Talking Smack and he accidentally revealed a memo from Vince on camera which stated, "Identify all consequences if Roman loses," per Vince. So it appears as if Vince still likes to micromanage as much as possible even on a show such as Talking Smack. Now, it's rather common for WWE superstars to slow down the pace of the match when Raw or SmackDown goes to a commercial break. However, during the pandemic, when Raw and SmackDown were presented at the Performance Center, WWE allowed their talent to stop wrestling altogether during commercial breaks. Since there was no fans in attendance, it made little sense for talent to be wrestling. Leaked footage surfaced in 2020 of Sasha Banks, Bayley, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross taking a break during a tag match. Fans could actually hear the four women talking about the match and they were casually catching a breather whilst WWE went to a commercial. One of the most memorable moments of Alexa Bliss's career was the time she threw a fireball in the face of Randy Orton. This segment was one of the most non-PG moments to take place in the modern-day edition of Raw, and it received praise for pushing the envelope in relation to how far WWE could push their content. Fans questioned how the WWE performed the segment safely, and some fans questioned if the fireball was a computer-generated image. No, this wasn't the case, as WWE would use a traditional flash paper method to execute the stunt. Due to the nature and danger of the fireball itself, they also pre-taped the segment. Finn Balor's Demon persona was handed his first loss on the WWE main roster at the 2021 Extreme Rules pay-per-view. The Demon would be defeated by Universal Champion Roman Reigns after the ring rope broke during the coup de grace attempt. Reigns was then able to capitalize and execute a spear for the victory. Since the pay-per-view took place in front of fans, they wondered how WWE managed to break the rope safely. Well, it turns out a crew member who was located at ringside simply cut the rope. Thanks to the WWE utilizing red light during the matches, this crew member was barely seen. Nevertheless, fans in attendance managed to see the trick performed firsthand. Now, have you ever wondered how wrestlers remember all the spots for their match? Well, you don't have to. Wrestlers discreetly communicate with each other during a match and remind each other what spot should come next. WWE legend John Cena is notorious for spot calling and seems to have a habit of declaring spots in a very obvious manner. Top wrestling companies such as WWE have a habit of saying shows are sold out, but in reality, they're far from it. Take for instance Wrestlemania 3 and Wrestlemania 32, WWE highly inflated the number of fans in attendance to shatter records, and in turn make for the aforementioned events appear more popular than they actually were. The Buried Alive match is a gimmick match that has often confused fans, as it was initially hard to determine how WWE pulled off the illusion. The secret usually lies in a trap door when the dirt is poured onto the grave and the wrestler in question is usually already safely back in the locker room. Well, save for that time the Undertaker managed to pull his hand out from the grave. He was more than likely in a side compartment, which was fully breathable. Have you wondered how wrestling companies give instructions to wrestlers in the ring during a match? Well, it's all down to the referee. The referee usually has an earpiece which allows the team backstage to communicate with the referee directly. The referee then can repeat the instructions to the wrestlers themselves in the middle of the match. Commentators are often fed lines from production staff backstage, and this happens a lot in WWE, specifically when Vince McMahon ran things. McMahon was prone to direct traffic and inform announcers such as Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler what to say live on air. Companies such as WWE and AEW like to make a show look like it's sold out, when in reality half of the arena is actually empty. Both companies will usually shoot on one side of the arena and the other side of the arena will be covered up with a black curtain to avoid anyone at home seeing the empty seats. When a wrestler is put through the ring, this is executed by removing one panel of wood from under the ring, meaning that the wrestler in question can safely and easily fall through the ring. Obviously, other wrestlers who are not supposed to go through the ring have to avoid that spot completely. But when the ring collapses in the match, the ring is rigged for the exact pre-planned moment. The wrestlers should look to land in a specific location in order for the collapse to occur safely, and to make sure themselves as well as the referee aren't taken by surprise. Now, the iconic segment which saw Stone Cold Steve Austin spray the corporation with beer had a huge secret attached to it. According to Austin himself, WWE used 30 gallons of beer for the segment, but after that, they simply switched it to water. In a similar segment which saw Kurt Angle spray the Alliance with milk, no milk was actually used for the segment. According to Angle, WWE used plain old water with white colouring to simply give the illusion of milk. Now, the 1998 Royal Rumble saw Kane chokeslam his brother The Undertaker into a casket. The casket would then be set ablaze, but how exactly did the dead man disappear out of the casket? Well, it turns out that the position of the casket was close to the ring apron, and the casket had a special compartment which allowed the dead man to simply roll under the ring to avoid any impending flames of destruction. In 2004 at the Great American Bash pay-per-view, Paul Bearer was buried alive in cement. To pull this off, WWE would use pre-recorded footage of Bearer in the tank, whilst any live pay-per-view footage of Bearer in the tank wasn't actually Bearer, it was a trained stunt performer. And most of the signs that fans bring to shows are completely legit. But companies such as WWE have been known to hand out signs to push narrative. This was seen in 2018 when WWE handed out signs that reference fans wanting to see women's tag titles in WWE. Then naturally, just a few short months later, they were finally introduced on WWE programming. A gum is used by wrestlers to stop their mouth getting dry, as it generates saliva. Additionally, one trick is that wrestlers will spit out the gum after a spot, and commentators like to pretend that the wrestler in question has just had a tooth knocked out. As per WWE law, the Money in the Bank briefcase is supposed to contain a written contract, but in reality, the briefcase is completely empty. This was seen on Raw in 2022 as Austin Theory's Money in the Bank briefcase would fly open and the lack of contents would be exposed to the entire world. Blindfold matches have been rare in modern wrestling, but the most well-known blindfold match took place at WrestleMania 7 between Jake the Snake Roberts and Rick Martel. The illusion of the match was completely destroyed just seconds in, as Roberts would put his hand in the hooded blindfold and you could see his hands through the mesh, meaning that the wrestlers had the ability to see during the match. WWE likes to make their wrestlers appear larger than life, and camera work can help WWE achieve the same. In 2021, during a backstage segment with the Mysterios and Austin Theory, the camera would track back to reveal that the interviewer Kevin Patrick was crouched down to appear smaller. This in turn made the other wrestlers appear much taller than they genuinely were. When a wrestler returns to a company like WWE or AEW, the company will go to great lengths to keep it a secret. Typically, only a select few individuals will know about the return, and on the day of the actual return, the wrestler will be hidden away. When the wrestler gets to the arena, they aren't allowed in the locker room. Instead, they are placed in a trailer or a production truck where they will remain until it's time for them to make their grand return. One spot that has risen in popularity over the past decade has been the barricade spot. A wrestler being put through the barricade has been used extensively in WWE, and there's a smart secret to it. In essence, the barricade has already been detached, and the wrestler just simply needs to fall into it with some force to knock it over. This barricade is heavily padded, meaning that it's one of the safest spots that a WWE wrestler can do in a featured matchup. Have you ever wondered why referees tell wrestlers to get down from the top rope? Well, in theory, the wrestler should be disqualified for ascending the top rope. When the wrestler reaches the top rope, they are technically out of bounds and out of the ring. There's an established 5 count for whenever a wrestler uses the ropes for an advantage, so the 5 count applies here too. Wrestlers with longer hair typically enjoy wetting their hair before coming through the curtain. And the main reason for this is that it keeps them cool, but it also allows them to incorporate hairography into their matches. This means that their hair moves about upon them taking bumps, which in turn makes for a compelling visual for fans. Whenever an interview takes place backstage in WWE, a fake microphone is usually used. The microphone is usually a prop, as the sound is picked up via a boom mic. This is why wrestlers can be heard when they don't even have a microphone in hand. One of the most infamous segments on WWE TV in 2007 saw Vince McMahon's limo explode. This was done using pre-recorded footage, and when the actual limo explosion went off, nobody was in close proximity to the limo, meaning that nobody was in true danger. You can even see continuity on the floor, as it's suddenly wet, and now it's not. The role of the referee goes beyond counting the 1, 2, 3, as a referee can be vital in a matchup. The referee usually knows how the match is going to play out, so if a spot is going wrong, the referee can smartly be used to ensure it goes correctly. This has been seen several times throughout wrestling history. Take for instance at the Evolution pay-per-view in 2018, Becky Lynch was attempting to reach for a chair which would allow her to escape the figure 8. Lynch was unable to reach the chair, so the referee kicked the chair towards Lynch, allowing the spot to be completed as initially planned. Following a big spot in the match, it is vital that the referee checks on a wrestler to ensure that they aren't injured. To do this, the referee will go over to each wrestler and grab their hand. If the wrestler squeezes the referee's hand in return, it usually means that they're completely fine. This is an extremely smart way to ensuring wrestler safety in matches, and once you know how it happens, it's rather hard to miss when watching a match on TV. Whilst the superkick is now one of the most overused moves in pro wrestling, the move needs to be delivered with a degree of caution. The most famous wrestler to ever deliver the move was Shawn Michaels, whose version of the move known as Sweet Chin Music. If contact is made, then the wrestler should have their hands up to cushion the blow. Additionally, a lot of modern wrestlers aim their kicks towards the shoulder or chest, and the kick should be delivered lightly so the move causes as little damage as possible. The wrestler delivering the move is also prone to slapping their thigh, which makes an emphatic sound. However, it's worth noting that this has received extensive criticism in recent years, and a number of wrestlers prefer not to incorporate a thigh slap. The Crossroads, as performed by WWE star Cody Rhodes, is one of the most popular finishing moves in modern wrestling. The move looks complicated to perform, but it's fairly simple. The individual taking the move simply rotates and performs a front face bump. The move is hard to get wrong, and some wrestlers even opt to spike their own head when taking the move. This has been seen in Rhodes' matches with the likes of Chad Gable. This is an emphatic sell of the move, but shouldn't be attempted by those who are just starting to learn their craft. Bobby Lashley's Hurt Lock finisher was popularized by Chris Masters in the Ruthless Aggression era. The secret to the submission move is all about the pressure. When applying the move, a little pressure should be applied, and as long as the move still looks legitimate, it passes as a credible looking move. If the wrestler is expected to escape the hold, then that wrestler in question will usually only apply a tiny bit of pressure. This will allow the wrestler to easily escape it. Submission moves of this nature need to be sold with conviction and meaning, or the secret is just going to be exposed to the entire fan base. One of the most devastating yet iconic moves in WWE history is the Tombstone Piledriver. This was perfected by The Undertaker, as the move can be dangerous, but if it's performed by a professional such as the Deadman, no harm will come to the opponent. The wrestler's head should never touch the mat when delivering the move, and in order to make sure the Deadman doesn't drop his opponent, the opponent will wrap their arms around the Deadman, giving themselves a ton of support when he eventually falls hard onto his knees. For the move to work, it requires a ton of cooperation, but as long as both wrestlers are on the same page, everything should be absolutely fine. The styles clash has caused a number of injuries throughout the move's existence, and the main reason for this is that certain wrestlers have taken the move completely the wrong way. When AJ Styles gets his opponent in a position to slam them into the mat, the opponent must not under any circumstances tuck their chin in. This can lead to a broken neck. The issue is that it's a wrestler's instinct to tuck their chin in during a match, so this likely explains why so many injuries have occurred. John Cena's version of the STF is often criticized, as Cena greatly exposes how the move is performed safely. The lower leg of the opponent should be loosely locked behind the leg of the wrestler delivering the move. Then the wrestler delivering the move should then apply a face lock style submission that applies little to no pressure. If this was applied for real, it would cause extreme anguish, so it's all about being cautious with the move and limiting how much pressure is applied. German suplexes are very common in modern wrestling, but there is a trick in making sure the move is executed as safely as possible. The wrestler taking the move should aim to land on their back or upper shoulder region, but sometimes they have a horrible landing and land right on their head or neck. According to WWE legend Mick Foley on his podcast, he hates German suplexes. This comes from a man who was thrown off the top of a Hell in a Cell. One of the most fundamental moves in wrestling is the suplex. The suplex is performed thanks to clear cooperation between the two wrestlers, and the wrestler taking the move will usually post their hand on the wrestler's side, which allows them to flip over and take the suplex bump. In relation to the wrestler delivering the move, they will keep their hand under the wrestler's chin. This protects the wrestler's neck and ensures they land completely safe. The F5 is an iconic finisher that Brock Lesnar debuted all the way back in 2002. The move involves Lesnar performing a fireman's carry before spinning his opponent in the air and making them land on their front. The move is incredibly safe, as Lesnar, when performing the move, will release his opponent in a way that allows them to execute a safe landing. Not that it hasn't happened before, but it's quite hard for a wrestler to land on their head when taking the move. That is, as long as the wrestler delivering the move is someone of a skilled caliber. Whenever Victoria hit a Widow's Peak finishing move, the crowd would audibly gasp because it looked so devastating. Now, the secret to the move is that the wrestler taking the move will fall to their knees and Victoria will loosely hold their chin, and this keeps the wrestler's neck completely safe. This applied in a quick motion makes the move look sinister, but in reality it's incredibly safe when delivered correctly. Due to the nature of the move, it allows the wrestler taking the move to deliver their own unique sell, and some of the sells of the finishing move have been unbelievably impressive. The Razor's Edge finishing move is impressive visually, and it's a shame that wrestlers are reluctant to use the move. Sheamus uses a version of the move known as the High Cross, which he now uses sporadically and is mainly kept for big matches. The move begins with a wrestler placing their opponent's head between their legs, and the wrestler delivering the move will then lift their opponent over his shoulders in a cross position over his head. The secret behind the move is by performing a standard back bump with the wrestler putting their arms out, but some wrestlers have awkwardly landed on their head, which is certainly not the way to land. Eddie Guerrero and Rob Van Dam both popularized the frog splash, and the move is still used in modern WWE by the likes of Kevin Owens and Montez Ford. To perform the move safely though, the wrestler delivering the move should look to land on their knees and forearms, which means ultimately they will be taking the majority if not all of the impact. The wrestlers taking the move needs to keep their arms in tight. This is to ensure that their arm doesn't take the brute force of the landing. The Walls of Jericho is perhaps one of the most well-known submission moves of all time. Chris Jericho's version of the Boston Crab has one main secret though, and it comes down to pressure. When Jericho gets a grip of his opponent's legs, he barely applies any pressure. The reason that the move looks so painful comes down to the opponent's effective selling. The opponent has to sell the move as if they're in absolute agony, and that's how the move is going to be seen by the audience as a credible, legitimate submission hold. One move that is featured in 99% of matches is the body slam. It's one of the first moves that is taught to students at wrestling school, and the mechanics of the move are rather simple. The wrestler taking the body slam will use their hand to post on the wrestler's leg. This allows the wrestler delivering the move to safely lift them up and slam them to the mat. This makes the wrestler a lot lighter, and it's how smaller wrestlers are able to slam super heavyweights. It's also common for the wrestler delivering the move to realign their head to the back of their opponent's head. This ensures that the wrestler lands back first and avoids having a horrific landing on their neck or head area. Now, the wrestler for making the leg drop famous is Hulk Hogan, but even he has to admit that it hurts the wrestler giving the move way more than the wrestler taking it. In the kayfabe world, it's explained that the move is performed with the wrestler landing on their opponent's neck, but obviously if this was actually happening, there would be grave consequences. Instead, the wrestler delivering the move will land on top of their opponent's chest, but without full-blown contact. When the wrestler sits down for the leg drop, they will land with their leg bent, meaning that they themselves take the majority of the impact. Whenever a wrestler such as CM Punk delivers a GTS, it always looks painful to take, but there is a secret to perfecting the move and keeping it safe. When the wrestler taking the move is about to hit the knee, they should already have their feet on the ground. Then, within a matter of moments, the wrestler should turn their head and safely land their head on the wrestler's cushioned knee pad. The wrestler will then perform a back bump to sell the impact of the perceived brutality. This can be a hard move to understand and should only be attempted by trained professionals. If a wrestler can take a front face bump, then they can master the sell of Triple H's pedigree. To execute the move, the wrestler delivering the pedigree must let go of the wrestler's arms, and this allows the wrestler taking the move to fall safely. In relation to the person taking the move, all they have to do is simply kick their legs out and land with a traditional front face bump. The key is to land as flat as possible to avoid landing in an awkward position. Some wrestlers such as Kane prefer to land on their knees. Whilst this is much safer, the long-term damage of this type of bump is severe. Now, upon a chokeslam being set to be delivered, the first thing to remember is that the wrestler delivering the move should make no legitimate contact with the throat. They should have their grip on the opponent's chest, and if they insist on having a throat grip, under no circumstances should any pressure be applied. The wrestler giving the move will then throw out their opponent's arm, so their armpit is basically resting on their shoulder. This allows the wrestler taking the move to elevate themselves up for the move as high as they want to go. The wrestler taking the move will then jump and perform a back bump, and the wrestler delivering the move has to do very little, but sometimes a grab of the type should be encouraged so that the wrestler can get extra momentum. It's common belief amongst wrestlers that Finn Balor's coup de grace is one of the most painful moves to take. The move sucks in the sense that it's going to hurt no matter what, but there is a certain way Balor can land that can reduce the pain. Balor can land on his back almost immediately after coming off the top rope. This means that most of the impact is taken on his back rather than going through his feet. This is unfortunately the only way of keeping the move safe, and a move of this caliber should mainly be left to those wrestlers with decades of experience, such as the inaugural WWE Universal Champion. To perform the RKO, it's all about timing. When the wrestler delivering the move locks in the reverse headlock, both wrestlers need to perform their distinct bumps at the exact same time. The wrestler delivering the move needs to jump forward and deliver a back bump, whereas the wrestler taking the move needs to safely perform a front face bump, and they can even throw in some height on the bump by performing a jump. Some wrestlers such as Rob Van Dam and Ricochet have opted to take the move with a spike style bump, which is a much more complex way of taking the move and can lead to injury if not done correctly. The 2003 Survivor Series event featured a stacked card including Team Austin vs Team Bischoff and Team Angle vs Team Lesnar, but perhaps the most intriguing match on the show was a Buried Alive match between Vince and The Undertaker. This match was set to write The Undertaker off TV and subsequently retire the beloved biker character. The match predominantly featured The Undertaker destroying McMahon, but when Kane got involved, the match took a drastic turn. Kane assisted McMahon in winning the match and burying alive The Undertaker as a result. WWE's production team failed in their role to hide the secrets of the Buried Alive match type, as towards the end of the match, it was hard to ignore the fact that viewers could see the dead man using a shovel in the grave, likely using it to access a trap door. This would have allowed him to reach a place of safety. The next time the camera panned to the grave, The Undertaker was selling, but the shovel had mysteriously gone missing, so it was unclear that the entrance to the trap door was now fully open and it was time for Taker to make his escape.